I never asked to become anybody's story. My name is Jake Miller, and all I ever really wanted was simple: coffee at dawn, a patch of grass where my Labrador could chase sticks, and the sound of my little girl Lily's laughter rolling through the house like sunlight. That was it. Nothing more, nothing less. But the world has a funny way of testing a man who thinks he's got life pared down to the essentials. For me, it came on a Tuesday morning at 6:30 sharp, in the form of 3 black Escalades rolling up my gravel driveway, kicking up so much dust it felt like a storm. The doors opened and out stepped men in suits so sharp they could cut glass. The tallest one looked like he had been pressed straight from a magazine cover. Clipboard in hand, voice smooth and cold, he said, "Mr. Miller, Harlan Lexington needs this land. Name your price." I felt Lily's little fingers tighten in my jeans, clutching hard like she used to when fireworks exploded overhead on the 4th of July. Her heart beat against my leg, fast and fragile, and something inside me locked into place. "Get off my property," I said, plain and steady. They laughed, condescending, practiced, like men who always get their way. But they didn't understand that the tremor in my hand wasn't fear. It was fury. It was years of service, a purple heart buried under scar tissue, and the quiet conviction that some things aren't for sale. The engines roared back to life, gravel crunched, and they left with dust trailing like a bad omen. I exhaled only when the road cleared. Lily looked up at me, eyes wide, and whispered, "Daddy, why do rich people want dirt?" I lifted her into my arms, buried my face in her hair that still smelled like maple syrup from breakfast. "Because they already bought everything else, baby girl." What I didn't know then was that someone else had been watching from the back seat of that third SUV. Claire Lexington. The billionaire's daughter. She grew up in penthouses that nearly touched the clouds. But she'd never once seen a man guard a broken fence like it was a cathedral. She was 28, trained to turn people's histories into neat acquisitions, each one reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet. She expected me to be just another easy signature, another piece of paper. But instead, she saw me kneeling in the dirt, showing Lily how to press soil around tiny tomato stems. "Roots first, then shoots," I told my girl, and I saw Claire watching from a distance, her expression cracking. That night, in some sterile hotel room, Claire probably read the file her security team had pulled on me. 2 tours. A lung kissed by shrapnel. A medical discharge. My wife died of cancer 2 years ago. Just me and Lily, holding on to what was left. She closed the file, but the image of Lily's muddy hands stayed, I later learned. The next morning, instead of a convoy, she came alone. No SUVs, no bodyguards, just a rented Ford Fiesta. She pulled up to my place and knocked while I was flipping pancakes with Lily balanced on my hip. In her hands was a box of blueberry muffins, sugar crystals sparkling like they were made of diamonds. "I come in peace," she said, awkward but earnest. Lily spotted the muffins and whispered, "Daddy, she's got glitter bread." That was it, I couldn't turn her away. Muffins were always the one thing I forgot on grocery runs. So I stepped aside, and Claire Lexington walked into my world. The house wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Crayon drawings taped to the fridge. A folded flag resting on the mantel. Dishes are drying in the rack. Claire's designer boots looked like they didn't belong, but then Lily handed her a tiny plastic cup of invisible tea, and suddenly Claire was cross-legged on the floor, sipping pretend Earl Grey with all the seriousness in the world. I leaned against the counter, spatula in hand, and said, "You're Harlan's kid, aren't you?" She smiled faintly. "Guilty. So you're here to finish the job your old man started?" She didn't flinch. "I came to see why a man would rather raise beans in his backyard than take 7 figures and live like a king." I flipped the pancake, watching the edges brown. "Because some things aren't for sale. Not at any price." Our eyes locked, and in that second, I realized she wasn't just another suit. There was something unsettled in her, something searching. Her father gave her 72 hours. 72 hours to get me to sign, or else the bulldozers, lawyers, and lobbyists would do it for him. Claire came back each day under the excuse of renegotiating, but the truth was written in every moment she spent on my land. She helped Lily build a ladybug habitat out of a mason jar, dirt smudging her manicured nails. She asked about my old knee injury, the one that ached before storms, and listened like she cared. She laughed at my clumsy jokes, though I think she loved Lily's chatter more. By the third day, a storm rolled in. Thunder shook the barn, rain drummed the tin roof, and I handed Claire one of my sweatshirts. She slipped it on, pulled the hood up, and breathed in like she was inhaling the whole world. We stacked hay bales for Lily's fort, shoulders brushing. Silence stretched between us, thick as the storm. Finally, Claire whispered, "My father's going to escalate. You know that." "Then let him," I said. She stepped closer, eyes searching mine. "I don't want to lose this place. Not for you. Not for Lily." "You won't," I told her. "I promise." The rain hammered harder. A flash of lightning lit up her face, and I reached to brush a piece of straw from her hair. It was such a small gesture, but it collapsed the space between us. Our lips met, soft, desperate, tasting of rain and impossible hope. For the first time in years, I felt alive. But time doesn't stop just because two people find something they weren't supposed to. The deadline was closing in. The 72 hours my land had been given felt like sand slipping through my fingers. I'd lived through countdowns before, tactical strikes overseas, missions where every tick of the second hand meant life or death, but this one was different. This wasn't about surviving. This was about keeping Lily's future rooted in the same soil her great-grandfather had broken with calloused hands and a prayer. Claire kept showing up. Every morning, sometimes with muffins, with coffee, once even with a bag of groceries. She clearly didn't know how to cook. She burned eggs so badly that Lily wrinkled her nose and said, "Miss Claire, maybe you should just stir the juice instead." Claire laughed, but I could see her cheeks flush. There was no armor in those moments. No billionaire's daughter. Just a woman, awkwardly trying to fit into a kitchen where crayons outnumbered recipe books. The more time she spent here, the more I saw her walls cracking. She admitted things in the barn one evening, her voice low as the sun dipped behind the ridge. "I don't remember the last time I sat down to dinner without my phone buzzing. Or when I cared about something that wasn't attached to a profit margin." I told her Lily would fix that. Lily fixed everyone. Sure enough, my daughter had already claimed her like she was a long-lost aunt. They built forts out of couch cushions, drew endless unicorns, and once, I walked in to find them both wearing princess crowns made of aluminum foil. Claire looked at me sheepishly, but she didn't stop. And me? I couldn't stop watching her. The way she tied Lily's shoes with more patience than she gave herself. The way she lingered by the tomato plants, fingertips grazing leaves like they were sacred. The way her eyes softened every time she caught me limping when the weather shifted. She wasn't just curious about my world, she was learning it, piece by piece, like she wanted to belong. But belonging and surviving were two different things. Harlan Lexington didn't get to be who he was by letting people slip through his fingers. The deadline came like a loaded gun. Morning broke with the growl of engines again, and this time, there was no convoy pretending politeness. Just one Escalade, a sheriff's cruiser, and a courier carrying a thick envelope that reeked of legal muscle. Claire's father stepped out himself. Tailored suit, silver hair, eyes like ice. He looked around my land like he was measuring where the bulldozers would start. Claire was already outside, waiting. I'll never forget the way she stood there, hair pulled back, shoulders squared, like she'd been bracing for this moment her whole life. "Walk away, Dad," she said, calm but firm. Harlan's smile didn't touch his eyes. "You're siding with this, farmer? Against your own blood?" I started to speak, but she raised her hand slightly, stopping me. Her eyes never left his. "I'm siding with someone who still knows what blood is for." What family means. The deputy shifted uncomfortably, holding the envelope. Harlan sneered, turning to me. Do you know what happens when a man like me decides he wants something, Miller? I didn't flinch. Yeah. Usually, somebody gets hurt. Claire pulled out her phone. Press him, Dad, and the whole country knows. War hero, single dad, billionaire bully. You'll be trending before lunch, and not in a way your board likes. For the first time, I saw hesitation crack the billionaire's mask. Claire's thumb hovered over her screen like a detonator. Then she pressed it. Within hours, hashtags I didn't understand were flashing across the internet. Neighbors started calling. Old buddies from the service texted. Reporters drove by, snapping pictures. Harlan cursed under his breath, muttered something about stock prices, then climbed back into his Escalade with the kind of fury that left scorch marks behind him. I thought the battle was won. But battles don't end when the enemy retreats. Sometimes, the hardest part comes after. That night, I found Claire in the barn, her suitcase open, clothes folded with the kind of precision only heartbreak requires. Going somewhere? I asked. She looked up, eyes rimmed red but still burning. He cut me off. I don't just lose the money, Jake. I lost the apartment, the car, the credit cards, everything. I'm officially a Lexington without a wallet. She laughed, sharp and broken. Can you believe it? I've never even paid an electric bill. I crossed the space, took the suitcase from her hands, and set it back down. You've got 10 acres here. A roof, even if it leaks in one corner. A little girl who thinks you hung the moon. We'll figure it out. Together. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but the fight drained out of her. She leaned against me instead, quiet, trembling. For once, she wasn't the billionaire's daughter or the polished negotiator. She was just Claire. Lily burst in right then, holding up a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a lopsided sun. She shoved it into Claire's hands like it was the deed to the ranch. This is us, she said proudly. Will you stay forever, Miss Claire? Claire crouched down, tears spilling now. Forever's a really big word, Lil. Then just stay till tomorrow, Lily said seriously. And we'll ask again the next day. Okay? I laughed, a sound I hadn't felt in years, and pulled them both close. In that moment, forever didn't seem so impossible after all. Days blurred into weeks. News trucks stopped parking on the road. Hashtags faded. But what stayed was Claire. She traded her heels for boots, her sleek phone for soil under her nails. She made lists of seeds to plant, though she still labeled the jars with handwriting Lily teased her about. She learned how to fix a fence, though it took 3 tries and a lot of cursing under her breath. And me? I learned how to let someone back in. We planted apple trees side by side, 2 for every one the bulldozers had threatened. Veterans from my old unit showed up with hammers and paint. Neighbors dropped off pies and toolboxes. The ranch wasn't just surviving anymore, it was alive, humming with a kind of hope I thought I'd buried. Claire never did get her father's apology. But she got something better. She got her name written next to mine, not on a deed, but in Lily's bedtime prayers, in the laughter echoing off the porch, in the roots we were putting down. And sometimes, on quiet nights, we'd sit on the swing together, the stars burning holes in the sky, and I'd whisper, "We didn't save this land, Claire. It saved us." She'd lean against me, her voice soft but sure. Roots first, then shoots. Always. Life after the showdown with Harlan didn't return to normal. It shifted into something new. I'd thought the hardest part was over when the Escalade disappeared down the gravel road and the hashtags burned up the internet. But battles don't end just because the shooting stops. There's always fallout, always pieces to put back together. Claire stayed. Not just for a night or a week, but for good. At first, it was awkward as hell. She had no clue how to live without a credit card that opened every door in Dallas. I watched her wrestle with the washing machine like it was a foreign object. She once stared at a gas can so long that I thought she might try to negotiate with it. But she learned. Slowly. Stubbornly. And with Lily coaching her along like a pint-sized general, she found her footing. Lily adored her. That was the biggest change. My little girl, who had been so careful with her love since her mama passed, poured it out like sunshine on Claire. She'd crawl into her lap with bedtime stories, braid her hair with clumsy little fingers, tug her hand to show her the first strawberry sprout in the garden. Every night, I'd catch them whispering under the quilt fort, laughter spilling out like music. It warmed me in places I thought had gone permanently cold. But love comes with a cost. Claire lost more than money when she stood up to her father. She lost the world she'd grown up in. Friends stopped calling. Former colleagues treated her like a liability. I'd catch her staring out across the pasture at night, her face shadowed by doubt. One evening, I found her on the porch steps, holding her phone like it was a lifeline that had gone dead. "It's quiet," she said, her voice soft. "Too quiet. I used to get 200 emails before breakfast. Now I don't even get spam." I sat down beside her and slid my arm around her shoulders. Maybe quiet's not a curse. Maybe it's the first time you can actually hear yourself think. She leaned into me, sighing. "And what if I don't like what I hear?" "Then you keep listening," I said. "Until you find the voice you trust." That's what this land does. It strips you bare, forces you to find out what really matters. And Claire, she was finding it. Neighbors noticed. Folks who'd watched me raise Lily alone, who'd kept their distance out of respect for my grief, started showing up more. They brought pie, tools, and advice. Veterans from my unit came too. We hammered boards together, painted the barn, and even fixed the corner of the roof that leaked. Claire worked alongside us, blistered hands and all, laughing at her own mistakes but never quitting. It was a different kind of wealth, sweat and dirt and community, and it fit her better than pearls ever had. One afternoon, she pulled me aside in the barn, her face flushed from hauling hay. "I don't think I've ever felt rich before," she admitted. "Not really. But today? Sweating like hell, smelling like manure? This is the richest I've ever been." I kissed her then, because there was no other answer. But Harlan wasn't finished. Not really. He never apologized, never called. Instead, months later, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. A crisp legal surrender of all claims to my land, signed and sealed. No note, no explanation. Just his way of admitting defeat. I showed it to Claire, and she stared at the paper for a long time, then tore it clean in half. "We don't need his permission," she said simply. "This place was always yours." We celebrated the first harvest that fall. Tomatoes, carrots, and more zucchini than any sane family could eat. Lily painted a sign in crooked letters, "Pay what you can, take what you need." We set up a stand by the road, and cars trickled in. Veterans dropped a few bills, single moms took baskets without paying a dime. No one left hungry. That was wealth, too. Claire surprised me most of all. She kept the books, but not on spreadsheets. She labeled 2 mason jars, 1 dreams, 1 bills. She slipped money into both with equal care, teaching Lily the difference between what we owed and what we hoped for. Watching her do that, I realized she wasn't just learning to live without her father's world. She was building a better one. Nights on the porch swing became our ritual. Boots tangled, stars overhead like pinholes in a dark sky. Lily would be asleep inside, the dog curled at her feet, and it would just be us. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was full. One night, I whispered what had been sitting in my chest since that first morning she showed up with muffins. "We didn't save this land, Claire. It saved us." She rested her head against my shoulder, her voice soft but steady. Roots first, then shoots. Always. And that was it. The war was over, but the life we were planting was just beginning. Claire didn't just become part of our story. She became the story. The woman who walked away from towers of glass and steel to put her hands in the dirt, to build a life with a scarred vet and his little girl. The billionaire's daughter who traded pearls for soil, power for peace, loneliness for love. Lily still asks her, almost every night, "Will you stay forever?" And Claire always smiles, brushing hair from her face, answering the same way. Forever's a really big word, Lil. But tomorrow? I'm here for tomorrow. And each morning, when the sun rises over the apple trees we planted together, I believe her. Because sometimes, the biggest battles aren't fought overseas or in boardrooms. Sometimes, they're fought right here at home, with nothing but love, grit, and the courage to stand your ground. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you don't just win the battle. You win a family.